Welcome to Femme Fantasy, where transformation, elegance, and self-discovery come to life. Av.
I never thought silk could feel like guilt.
It was the first thing I noticed when Mom handed me that pale lavender chemise, how the fabric slithered over my knuckles like a secret I hadn't asked to keep. My name is Jamie, and until that Tuesday evening in late October, I'd never worn anything meant for a woman. Not out of principle, not out of shame, just because it had never crossed my mind.
But Mom?
She'd been watching me for weeks. Not in a creepy way, but with that quiet, unnerving focus she gets when she's decided something about you before you've even decided it yourself. "Just try it on," she'd said, voice soft but firm, like she was offering me medicine I didn't know I needed. Her eyes didn't waver. She stood in the doorway of my bedroom, holding the lingerie like it was both a gift and a test. Behind her, the hallway light cast long shadows that made her look taller, more imposing than the woman who used to braid my hair when I was 6 and called me Sweet Pea when I scraped my knee.
I wanted to say no.
My throat tightened around the word, but it wouldn't come out. Maybe because I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen in years. Hope. Not the usual maternal hope. I hope you do well in school or I hope you find a good job, but something rawer, more personal. Like she was hoping for me, not just about me. So I took it. The moment the chemise touched my skin, the world tilted. It wasn't just the texture, cool, fluid, impossibly delicate, but the way it draped over my shoulders like it belonged there. My reflection in the dresser mirror looked wrong and right all at once, broad shoulders still there, chest flat, jaw sharp, but softened somehow by the gentle curve of the neckline, the way the fabric pooled around my waist like water finding its level. My breath hitched. "Turn around," Mom whispered. I did. And in that motion, something inside me cracked open, not painfully, but like a bud unfurling under unexpected sunlight.
She didn't say anything else.
Just watched, lips parted slightly, eyes shimmering. Then she reached out and tucked a loose strand of my hair behind my ear, her fingers lingering a second too long. "You look like her," she murmured, almost to herself. "Like who?"
I asked, voice barely audible.
"My sister," she said.
"Lena."
"She would have been your age now if," she trailed off, but I knew the rest. Aunt Lena had died in a car crash before I was born. All I had of her were a few faded photos and Mom's occasional wistful sighs. That night, I didn't take the chemise off right away. Long after Mom left, I stood in front of the mirror, tracing the lines of my new silhouette, wondering if this was who I'd been hiding, or who she wanted me to be. The silk whispered against my skin like a question I wasn't ready to answer. The next morning, I woke up still in the chemise. I hadn't meant to sleep in it. I'd just stared at myself so long in the mirror that exhaustion finally dragged me under, and I collapsed onto the bed fully dressed in lavender silk. Now, dawn light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across my arms, and the fabric clung to me like a second skin, damp with sleep and something else I couldn't name. I peeled it off slowly, folding it with a care that surprised me, as if it were made of glass instead of thread. Then I shoved it to the back of my bottom drawer, beneath old t-shirts and mismatched socks, like burying a secret.
But secrets have a way of rising.
At breakfast, Mom didn't mention it. She poured coffee into her chipped blue mug, the one with the faded daisy, and hummed a tune I didn't recognize. But her eyes kept flicking toward me, not with accusation, but with a quiet anticipation, like she was waiting for the tide to turn. "Big test today?" she asked, buttering toast.
"Yeah. Calculus."
"You'll do fine."
She slid the toast toward me.
"You always do." There was something in her tone, gentler, almost reverent, that made my stomach twist. Was she seeing me differently now?
Or had she always seen something I'd refused to?
School was its usual blur of lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on linoleum, and the low hum of teenage anxiety. But today, everything felt sharper. Every glance from a classmate felt loaded.
Did they know? Could they tell I'd worn women's lingerie less than 12 hours ago?
Ridiculous, of course, but shame doesn't care about logic. It coils around your ribs and squeezes until you forget how to breathe normally. During lunch, my best friend Marcus nudged me. "Dude, you okay? You've been zoning out all day." "Just tired," I mumbled, pushing my fries around.
He studied me for a beat too long.
"You look different." My fork clattered against the tray.
"How?"
"I dunno. Softer? Like you got your edges sanded down or something." He laughed, but I didn't. That word, softer, lodged in my chest like a splinter.
Was that what the chemise had done?
Not changed me, but revealed something already there, waiting beneath the surface? After school, I found another item on my bed, a pair of sheer black stockings, neatly rolled, resting on a folded pink camisole.
No note.
Just the quiet certainty that this wasn't over. I almost threw them away. But instead, I held the stockings up to the light, watching how they caught the sun like spider silk. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, I sat on the edge of my bed and began to roll them up my legs. The sensation was electric, not sexual, but deeply intimate, like rediscovering a part of my body I'd ignored for years. The way the fabric hugged my calves, the whisper of nylon against skin, the subtle sheen that made my legs look longer, smoother, it felt like stepping into a room I'd walked past my whole life but never dared to enter. When I stood, I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror on the closet door. The boy I knew was still there, but layered now, like a painting with translucent glazes. My shoulders were broad, yes, but the camisole's delicate straps drew the eye downward, to the gentle slope of my torso. My jaw was still strong, but my eyes looked curious.
Not scared. Not angry. Curious. And that terrified me more than anything.
By the third day, the drawer wasn't enough. The lingerie had multiplied, lace-trimmed boy shorts, a satin slip the color of rose quartz, even a matching bra set in dove gray that I hadn't dared to try on yet.
Mom never said a word.
She just left them like offerings on my pillow, my desk, once even tucked inside my calculus textbook, as if knowledge and transformation were somehow linked.
I told myself I was only trying them on to understand her, to figure out why she was doing this.
But the truth was quieter, more insistent. I kept putting them on because, for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as the son she expected, but as someone I didn't yet have a name for. One rainy afternoon, while the house was empty, I stood in front of the mirror wearing the gray bra and matching panties, the slip draped over my shoulders like a ghost of elegance. I turned slowly, watching how the light caught the satin, how my posture shifted without me even trying, spine straighter, hips tilting slightly, as if my body remembered a rhythm my mind had forgotten. And then I did something I hadn't done since I was 10. I twirled.
Just once.
A clumsy, half-hearted spin. But in that moment, the world blurred into streaks of color and sound. And I laughed. A real laugh, bubbling up from somewhere deep and unguarded.
It startled me. When was the last time I'd laughed like that?
Not the polite chuckle I gave Marcus or the dry snort during class, but a laugh that shook my ribs and made my eyes water. I stopped mid-turn, breathless, and met my own gaze in the mirror. "Who are you?"
I whispered. The reflection didn't answer.
But for the first time, it didn't look away either. That evening, Mom found me sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a hoodie despite the mild air. She sat beside me without asking, her presence warm and steady.
"You're not mad," I said finally. It wasn't a question.
She sighed, watching the last leaves of autumn spiral down from the maple tree. "I used to be," she admitted. "When I was young, I thought being different was dangerous. So I tucked it all away, my dreams, my feelings, even my grief for Lena. I thought if I played it safe, I'd keep you safe too." She turned to me, her eyes soft but unwavering. "But safe isn't the same as whole."
I swallowed hard.
"What if I don't know what whole looks like?" "You don't have to," she said gently. "You just have to be willing to look." Later that night, I took the gray bra out of the drawer again. This time, I didn't just try it on, I studied it. The way the cups curved, the delicate clasp at the back, the tiny bow at the center.
It wasn't meant to hide or disguise.
It was meant to honor, to cradle something precious. And maybe, just maybe, that something was me.
I wore it to bed again.
Not as a secret, but as a promise.
The real test came on a Thursday.
Mom had a parent-teacher conference, which meant the house would be empty for 2 hours. 2 hours of silence, of space, of possibility. I'd been thinking about it all week, not just trying on pieces, but combining them. Creating a look. Not a costume, not a joke, but something that felt intentional. I chose the rose quartz slip again, but this time paired it with the black stockings and a garter belt I'd found folded beneath my pillow that morning. Simple, no frills, just satin straps and quiet functionality. My hands trembled as I fastened the clips, my breath shallow with a mix of fear and exhilaration.
Then I did something I'd never done before. I put on makeup.
Not much, just a touch of concealer under my eyes, a swipe of clear brow gel to tame my unruly arches, and a sheer gloss that made my lips look dewy, not painted. I'd watched dozens of tutorials in secret, pausing and rewinding, memoizing the angles, the pressure, the way light played on cheekbones. Now, standing before the mirror, I tilted my head, studying the effect.
The person staring back wasn't a boy in a dress.
Wasn't a girl pretending to be something she wasn't. It was someone in between, someone becoming. And then, on impulse, I reached for the wig. Mom had left it in a box on my dresser the night before, a shoulder-length bob in warm chestnut brown, with subtle honey highlights. I'd avoided it for days, afraid it would cross a line I couldn't uncross. But now, holding it in my hands, it felt less like a disguise and more like a key. I secured it carefully, adjusting the cap until it sat just right. The weight of it was strange at first, foreign, yet comforting, like a hat I'd forgotten I owned. I brushed the strands gently, watching them fall around my face in soft waves.
And then I saw her. Not Aunt Lena. Not Mom. Me.
The sharpness of my jaw was still there, the width of my shoulders, the shadow of stubble I hadn't shaved, but softened, framed, recontextualized. My eyes looked larger, more expressive. My posture had shifted again, unconsciously, one hand resting on my hip, the other lightly touching my collarbone. I didn't recognize myself, and yet, I'd never felt more familiar.
A car pulled into the driveway. Panic shot through me like ice water.
I ripped off the wig, yanked the slip over my head, and shoved everything into the laundry basket, heart hammering. But as I stood there in my boxers and t-shirt, breathing hard, I realized something. I wasn't ashamed. I was protective.
Not of the secret, but of the feeling.
That fragile, glowing sense of rightness I'd just touched. I didn't want it trampled by misunderstanding, by laughter, by the careless weight of the outside world. When Mom walked in, she took one look at my flushed face and the slightly askew laundry basket and smiled, not smugly, but knowingly. "You're getting closer," she said softly.
Closer to what? I wanted to ask. But I already knew. Closer to myself. The mirror became my confessional.
Every night after homework, after the house settled into its quiet rhythm of creaking floorboards and distant traffic, I'd return to it. Not to hide, but to meet myself. I started experimenting. A cream-colored corset that cinched my waist just enough to create a subtle curve, paired with high-waisted briefs that smoothed without squeezing. I learned how to walk in kitten heels, just 2 inches, but enough to shift my center of gravity, to make my steps lighter, more deliberate. One evening, I stood in a full ensemble, ivory lace bralette, matching tap pants, sheer stockings, and the chestnut wig styled with a side part. I'd even applied a whisper of blush and mascara, just enough to enhance, not transform.
And then I did something reckless. I opened my bedroom door. Not all the way, just a crack, and stepped into the hallway.
The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator downstairs.
My pulse roared in my ears, but my feet kept moving. One step, then another.
I reached the top of the stairs and paused, gripping the banister.
What was I doing? Testing a boundary. Seeing if the world would shatter if I stepped beyond it. I took one step down. Then another.
Halfway down, I heard a soft gasp. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel in hand, eyes wide, not with shock, but with something like awe.
She didn't speak.
Just watched as I descended, slow and steady, like I belonged there.
When I reached the bottom, I stopped.
My breath came fast, but I held her gaze. "You're beautiful," she said simply. Not, "You look beautiful." Not, "You clean up nice."
"You are beautiful."
The words settled into my bones like sunlight after a long winter.
She didn't ask me to go back upstairs. Didn't tell me to change.
Instead, she walked over, took my hand, still slightly clammy, and led me to the living room. There, on the coffee table, sat a small box wrapped in silver paper.
"I've been waiting for the right moment," she said.
Inside was a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a single opal pendant that shifted colors in the light, blue, green, violet, like a mood ring for the soul.
"It was Lena's," Mom said. "She wore it every day."
Said it reminded her that identity isn't fixed, it's fluid, like the stone. I touched the opal, cool against my fingertips. "Why are you doing this?"
I finally asked, voice cracking.
"Why now?" She looked at me for a long time. "Because when you were born, the nurse said, 'It's a boy,' and I smiled and said thank you. But that night, alone in the hospital room, I looked at your face, so soft, so open. And I whispered, "Who are you really?"
I promised myself I'd never force you into a box. But life got loud. And I got scared. She squeezed my hand. I'm not scared anymore. Tears blurred my vision. Not tears of sadness, but of release, like a knot inside me had finally come undone. I wore the necklace to bed that night, the opal resting just above my collarbone, pulsing faintly with every heartbeat. The opal became my anchor. I wore it every time I dressed, not hidden beneath fabric, but resting openly against my skin, a quiet declaration that this wasn't playtime or rebellion. It was truth, worn like armor. But truth, I was learning, doesn't stay contained. It spilled into my days in subtle ways. I caught myself standing differently in line at school, shoulders back, chin slightly lifted, not in defiance, but in quiet ownership. I started paying attention to how light fell on faces, how fabric moved with the body, how a single accessory could shift an entire mood. Marcus noticed first. "Dude," he said one afternoon as we walked home, kicking pebbles off the sidewalk. "You've been glowing lately. Like you figured something out." I almost laughed. Maybe I did. He shoved his hands in his pockets, thoughtful. "You know, my cousin came out as non-binary last year. Started using they/them pronouns. At first, I didn't get it. But then I saw how much lighter they looked, you know? Like they'd been carrying a backpack full of bricks their whole life, and someone finally let them take it off." I stopped walking. "Do I look lighter?" He turned, studied me with that unguarded honesty only best friends can offer. "Yeah," he said softly. "You do." That night, I stood before the mirror wearing a simple black chemise and the opal necklace, the wig resting on its stand nearby. I didn't need it right then. The transformation wasn't about the hair or the clothes, it was about the way I held myself, the way I met my own eyes without flinching. I whispered a new name into the silence, Jules. It felt right. Not perfect. Nothing ever is, but right, like a key turning in a lock I hadn't known existed. The next morning, I told Mom. We were washing dishes side by side, steam rising from the sink, when I said, "I think I'd like to be called Jules." She didn't miss a beat. Rinsed a plate, set it in the drying rack, and said, "Jules. I like that." Then she turned, wiped her hands on her apron, and cupped my face. "Welcome home, sweetheart." No fanfare. No interrogation. Just acceptance, warm and immediate, like stepping into sunlight after a long night. But the real test was still coming. Because school wasn't just Marcus. School was hallways full of eyes, lockers slamming like judgment, teachers who called roll with names carved in stone. And I had no idea how to be Jules there. I didn't change my name at school right away. Not out of fear, though fear was there, coiled in my stomach like a sleeping snake, but out of respect for the process. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to earn it, not just declare it. So I started small. I swapped my usual graphic tees for softer fabrics, flowy blouses in muted tones, a cashmere sweater that draped like a sigh. I let my hair grow just long enough to tuck behind my ears, and I stopped slouching in class. When Mr. Callahan called Jamie Reynolds during roll, I answered, but my voice was quieter, smoother, less performative. Some noticed. Most didn't. But then came the art class incident. We were sketching still lifes, vases, fruit, draped cloth, and Ms. Delgado moved between desks, offering gentle critiques. When she reached me, she paused, studying my drawing, then my face. "You have a very feminine line quality," she said, not unkindly. "Soft edges, intuitive shading. It's lovely." My cheeks burned, but I didn't look down. "Thank you." She tilted her head. "Have you ever considered figure drawing? You have an eye for form." That afternoon, I lingered after class. "Ms. Delgado." She looked up from her desk. "Yes, Jamie?" I took a breath. Actually, I've been thinking of going by Jules." She didn't blink, just set down her pen and smiled. "Jules. That suits you." Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, she opened her grade book and crossed out Jamie, writing Jules neatly beside it. "Consider it done." Walking out of that classroom, I felt taller. Not because I'd changed anything outwardly, but because someone had seen me, and honored what they saw. That night, I dressed fully for the first time with intention, not secrecy.
Not just lingerie, but a full outfit. A cream satin slip dress that fell just above the knee, the opal necklace gleaming at my throat, the chestnut wig styled with a deep side part. I even applied a touch of kohl to my lower lash line, just enough to deepen my gaze. I didn't hide in my room. I walked downstairs and sat with Mom on the couch while she graded papers. She glanced at me once, then again, longer this time. "You're ready," she said. "For what?" "For the world." I wasn't sure I was. But for the first time, I believed I might be someday. The world, it turned out, wasn't ready for me, but I was learning not to wait for its permission. I started wearing skirts on weekends. Not miniskirts or anything flashy, just simple A-lines in neutral tones, paired with turtlenecks or button-downs. Mom and I went shopping together one Saturday, and when the saleswoman asked, "For your daughter?" Mom simply smiled and said, "Yes." No correction. No hesitation. Just pride, quiet and unshakable. Back at school, I began answering to Jules in small circles, first with Marcus, then with a few art classmates, then with the librarian who'd known me since middle school. Each time someone used my name, it felt like a stitch being sewn into the fabric of my reality, making it stronger, more real. But not everyone was kind. In the cafeteria one day, a guy from the football team, Tyler, I think his name was, leaned over as I passed and sneered, "Nice dress, princess." My stomach dropped, but I kept walking. Marcus shot up from our table, ready to throw hands, but I put a hand on his arm. "It's okay," I said. Later, in the empty art room, I cried, not from shame, but from exhaustion. The weight of constantly navigating other people's discomfort was heavier than I'd expected. Ms. Delgado found me there, slumped over a sketchpad. She didn't ask what was wrong. Just poured 2 cups of tea from her thermos and sat beside me. "You know," she said after a while, "Van Gogh was mocked in his lifetime. They called his brushstrokes ugly, his colors unreal. But he kept painting anyway. Not for them. For the truth in his bones." She tapped my chest lightly. "Your truth matters more than their noise." I wiped my eyes. "What if I'm not strong enough?" "You already are," she said. "You're here. You're trying. That's strength." That night, I stood before the mirror in a deep emerald slip, the opal catching the light like a secret flame. I didn't look away. Didn't flinch. Because I realized something. The mirror wasn't just showing me my reflection. It was showing me my resilience. The turning point came on a rainy Friday in November. I'd been invited to an art showcase at the community center. Ms. Delgado had submitted one of my sketches without telling me, and it had been selected. Figure study number 3. A charcoal drawing of hands clasped in prayer, or maybe just holding on. I decided to go as Jules. Not partially. Not just for fun. Fully. I wore a tailored black dress with 3/4 sleeves, the opal necklace resting against my collarbone like a promise. The chestnut wig was curled at the ends, and I'd practiced my walk in heels until it felt natural. Mom helped me with my makeup, just enough to define, not disguise, and when she stepped back, her eyes filled with tears. "You look like you," she whispered. At the community center, I kept to the edges at first, sipping sparkling water and watching people admire the art. Then someone tapped my shoulder. It was Ms. Delgado, beaming. "Jules, you came." Before I could respond, she turned to the small crowd gathered near my piece. "Everyone, this is Jules, the artist behind figure study number 3. Heads turned. Conversations paused. For a heartbeat, I wanted to vanish. But then I remembered the mirror. The opal. Mom's voice saying, "You're beautiful." I straightened my spine and stepped forward. A woman in a red scarf approached. "Your use of negative space is exquisite," she said. "It's like the hands are both holding and being held." I smiled. That's exactly what I was trying to say. No one asked if I was really a girl. No one questioned my name. They saw the art, and through it, they saw me. On the drive home, rain pattering on the windshield, Mom reached over and squeezed my knee. "Proud of you," she said simply. And for the first time, I believed I was worth being proud of. The turning point came on a rainy Friday in November. I'd been invited to an art showcase at the community center. Ms. Delgado had submitted one of my sketches without telling me, and it had been selected. Figure study number 3, a charcoal drawing of hands clasped in prayer, or maybe just holding on. I decided to go as Jules. Not partially. Not just for fun. Fully. I wore a tailored black dress with three-quarter sleeves, the opal necklace resting against my collarbone like a promise. The chestnut wig was curled at the ends, and I'd practiced my walk in heels until it felt natural. Mom helped me with my makeup, just enough to define, not disguise, and when she stepped back, her eyes filled with tears.
"You look like you," she whispered.
At the community center, I kept to the edges at first, sipping sparkling water and watching people admire the art. Then someone tapped my shoulder.
It was Ms. Delgado, beaming.
"Jules, you came." Before I could respond, she turned to the small crowd gathered near my piece. "Everyone, this is Jules, the artist behind figure study number 3.
Heads turned. Conversations paused. For a heartbeat, I wanted to vanish. But then I remembered the mirror. The opal.
Mom's voice saying, "You're beautiful."
I straightened my spine and stepped forward. A woman in a red scarf approached.
"Your use of negative space is exquisite," she said. "It's like the hands are both holding and being held."
I smiled.
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
No one asked if I was really a girl.
No one questioned my name.
They saw the art, and through it, they saw me.
On the drive home, rain pattering on the windshield, Mom reached over and squeezed my knee.
"Proud of you," she said simply.
And for the first time, I believed I was worth being proud of.